And we are live with another edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. I am one of your co-hosts, Nicholas Pavona, joined alongside by Andrew Johnson. And Andrew, we are in the spirit of Halloween, and there was definitely some spooky scenarios that happened this past Saturday as a big-time upset happened in the top 10. We saw a top 25 matchup take place in the Pac-12 once again. And now, as of tonight, the playoff poll has finally been released, the first one of the season. A little bit of a shakeup towards the top of the poll as well as the entire top 25 as it is. And now we get our first picture of who could potentially be in the national championship playoff poll, and where we might stand the next couple of weeks is still to be determined.
We had some very scary scenarios for a lot of these teams. Some of them are so scary that they ended their chances of making the college football playoffs.
For some teams, that is the case. For some others, there's still some hope, but it's getting very, very dim. Very, very dim. And one of those teams we'll talk about is the Oklahoma Sooners, who going into this past week had a tough road test going into Lawrence to take on the Kansas Jayhawks. And Oklahoma, obviously the sixth ranked team in the country going into this game, they knew they were going to be in for a battle against this Kansas team. This Kansas team coming off a tough defeat the week before to Oklahoma State. And Johnson, I know you're a big fan of this Jayhawk team, and I'm sure you were very ecstatic about seeing the final of this one as Kansas ending their 18-game losing streak against the Sooners with a 38-33 upset win at home. They now get a huge win in conference play, hand Oklahoma their first loss of the season, and really put a damper into their college football playoff hopes.
Yeah, can you say Rock Chalk Jayhawk? Kansas looked absolutely electric, and they started off the game getting I believe, a pick six right off the start,
Yes, they did.
and they didn't even from there. It didn't even they couldn't even look back. They looked absolutely fantastic from start to finish. They're starting to prove that they deserve to make a bowl game and maybe even a New Year's Six bowl. And this loss is going to affect, I think, Texas more so than Oklahoma because is it fair to say Oklahoma, unless they win the Big 12 title game, they're out now? And I don't think they're going to beat Texas twice.
Well, it's that Texas Oklahoma game right now seems to be the rematch for the Big 12 championship game. Unless Oklahoma State, who plays Oklahoma this upcoming weekend, puts off a big win, because then that could shake up that championship game. But if all else doesn't fail for those two teams, they'll meet again for the Big 12 championship, and you have to believe that's probably going to be a matchup in which we see the winner going to the college football playoff, because you have to look at the top of the order. You have Ohio State and Michigan still having to play each other. Washington and Oregon have already played each other, but both of them, unless they get some help along the way, they both probably won't make it, because one of them is not going to be able to make the Pac-12 championship game, because you got to keep in mind, the top two do make it, and yes, but they both still have to play USC. And I know USC has had a very up and down year, but they still have Caleb Williams. And as long as you have Caleb Williams on your team, you have a chance of winning some football games, especially in that Pac 12.
Now, what really killed the game was for Oklahoma was their defense and their penalties. 11 penalties for a loss of 101 yards. That's not going to be winning football.
No.
Even though they kind of dominated the ground game, the passing game was okay. If you had shown someone the blank stats just by rushing, passing, touchdowns, first downs, efficiency, you would have maybe think that Oklahoma would have won this game, especially when you tell them that Kansas threw two interceptions. The quarterback on Kansas, Jason Bean, threw two picks, but that wasn't the case. The Kansas defense stood strong, and I feel like Oklahoma beat themselves here.
Yeah, this really puts it was more of a big second half for Kansas. I mean, Oklahoma put up
Came
21 in
out
that second
firing
quarter.
in the second
And
half.
Kansas really needed a huge second half to get this win. And now they put themselves in the driver's seat, because if you think about it, they're still not technically out of the Big 12 race as well. They'll obviously need some help to get into that Big 12 championship game. But they get a big win. They're now bowl eligible. And as of now, they're back into the top 25 polls. We'll talk about the playoff poll in just a little bit. But this also really helps Texas, because now Kansas with the win, it's a good win on Texas's part, because remember, Texas beat this Kansas team not too long ago, and they beat them in convincing fashion. So this doesn't really hurt Texas overall by lose with the Oklahoma loss, but they still need to win the Big 12 championship. No matter who wins the Big 12 championship game, that most likely will get you into that college football playoff, unless you have a second loss before that championship game. So these teams need to make sure they don't lose along the way.
And speaking of losing, Duke getting shut out in a game versus Louisville. Louisville had a nice bounce back game, blanking Duke 23-0 this game. Duke falls to 5-3. They're out of the AP poll. And
They
I had
are,
said this,
unfortunately.
and I said this earlier in the season that Duke had a chance of a double-digit win season. And despite losing to Florida State and in Louisville in back-to-back weeks, I still think that's obtainable for them because North Carolina has looked really mortal, and they end the season playing Wake Forest, North Carolina, Virginia, Pittsburgh. Three out of four of those games they could definitely win, and I think there's still a toss up in North against North Carolina. So they can end the season with 9 wins, and if they win a bowl game, it's 10. So it's still there. It's just highly unlikely at this point.
Well, what's more highly unlikely now for them is the ACC championship game. I mean, that's pretty much out the window unless Louisville really goes on a bad stretch to end the season. But remember, we talked about this a couple weeks ago when Louisville lost to Pitt. We said to about it that this game essentially is the right to play a Florida State in the ACC championship game. And with North Carolina losing once again this past week, and they lost to Georgia Tech, their second straight loss in conference play, which I don't know what happened to North Carolina this last couple of weeks. They really just have fallen since having a great start to the season. But now, in terms of this game, Louisville gets back on track. They shut out Duke. They get the win. They're now in the driver's seat to play Florida State for the ACC championship game. And if you look at the new, college football playoff poll, they're 13th in the country. So they're once again back into the scenario of if things go their way and they win the ACC championship game, do you maybe consider them as a dark horse to be in the college football playoff? I don't see it happening, but once again, that's a scenario we have to talk about because they're right back into it. And if they're able to finish the season 11-1 going into that championship game against Florida State, you got to believe they have a great opportunity to do so.
Right now, let's talk about Louisville for a second here. The Cardinals had an amazing game on the ground here. Jawar Jordan destroyed Duke. They had no answer. It's not like he had one big gain for like 50 or 60 yards. He had a couple of modest games of 10, 15, 20 yards, but 21 rushing attempts, 163 yards, two touchdowns. They couldn't stop anything, especially when the Duke running game was absolutely awful. They had the same amount of attempts, but one quarter of the output offensively.
Right, and I think remember, if I'm not mistaken, he was also a big reason why Louisville got that win over Notre Dame just a couple weeks ago as well, because they were able to run the ball on that one as well, while also really having some strong defense. And once again, it showed in this game against Duke, giving the Cardinals now a 4-1 record in conference play, and like I said, in the driver's seat to potentially play in that ACC championship game.
Yeah, but I'm excited to see how the AC turns up because I really think that, and I said this before, I'm a big fan. I picked Florida State to win the ACC championship game. That was one of my picks at the beginning of the year.
Right.
I'm under the belief that Florida State could choke and it could be to Louisville. Can you imagine Louisville winning the ACC championship?
It would be a dark horse because a lot of people did not have that much faith in Louisville going into the year. They thought
I mean, I
maybe
think the
they'd
last
be
time they won a conference championship, they might have won the old Big East.
right,
Correct me if I'm wrong.
right. Well, especially for football, that's definitely the case because
Oh yeah, definitely for football. Basketball, it's been more recent than that, but for football, that's definitely the case.
right. So we'll have to see how that unfolds. But let's move into the next game of our conversation. Let's go now into the Pac-12 because we had two big games in the Pac-12 this past weekend, and one of them was the matchup between Oregon State going on the road into Arizona. We talked about this game last weekend. I said going into this one, this was a tricky game for Oregon State to go into because it's a road game at night. Arizona's been playing better football as of late, and anything could really realistically happen in this Pac-12 conference, and it showed in this one as Arizona scoring a late touchdown with 2 minutes left to give themselves a 10-point lead. The Beavers tried to come back, but they were just not able to have enough time to do so. And Arizona pulls off a huge win over the Beavers, 27-24. They now go to 5-3 on the season. And for the Beavers now, Johnson, that pretty much now eliminates them from any chances of making the Pac-12 championship game, in my opinion. And for their dark horse bid, like you wanted them to have for the college football playoff, that's essentially now out the window.
Yeah, I know the dark horse is now dead, but however, they're still playing for Pride Bowl game and maybe even a New Year's Six Bowl. This is still a very good team,
Right.
and the comments made by Dabo Sweeney over the weekend about their quarterback. kind of is going to light a fire under them too. He said that DJ should have transferred out. That his quarterback he has, his sophomore that's currently starting right now, is way better than him. You're not going to get a chance to play. And hey, DJ's proving him wrong right now. So I think he's going to take that motivation and it's going to stick with him and he's going to finish out this season strong. And Oregon State is still going to make a New Year's Six Bowl.
And they're still looking to play spoiler because remember, they still have to play Oregon at some point in the season. So they could still play spoiler in that Pac 12 conference. So
Hey, they play Washington and they play Oregon.
right. So they could really cause some chaos if they're able to beat one, maybe both of those teams along the way. So
And it's
there's still
crazy.
something to play for.
It's really, it's even crazier. Washington, even though they're the best team in the Pac-12 right now, they have a gauntlet to finish it. You could easily see them losing to USC. They're at USC this weekend,
Right.
which we can go into a little bit. Then they're hosting Utah on the 11th. Then they go at Oregon State and then versus Washington State.
Right.
Is it crazy to think that Washington can possibly not even make the Pac-12 title game?
It's
It's possible.
possible
It's
because
very possible.
look what's happened to Washington the last couple of weeks. They played some really close games these last couple of weeks, and that's got to be concerning. Obviously, the Oregon game you expected it to be close, but after that, they had close encounters with Arizona State and Stanford, and that's where I think you have to worry if you're a
I
Husky
think the
fan.
first red flag came up when they played California and they gave up 3 or 4 touchdowns. That's the first red flag to me started with this Washington team.
Yeah, so I don't know. We'll talk about them in a little bit when we discuss the Mushing Hour with their game against USC because that is a huge game because that really could make or break this team if they want to make the college football playoff. But a team that they faced a couple weeks ago was the Oregon Ducks, and they had a thrilling win in that game, holding on for a 36-33 win in that one. Oregon, we talked about them after that. They need to make sure they didn't lose another game down the stretch of the season in order to not only play for the Pac 12 championship game, but to play for a college football playoff. And one of those big games was this past weekend, taking on the 13th ranked Utah Utes, the defending two-time Pac 12 champions. And Oregon Johnson, they made a big time statement in this game, winning it by a final of 35-6. Their defense played strong. Bo Nix looked efficient once again. And they're now the sixth ranked team in the country as of this upcoming playoff poll. They're back into the driver's seat now, trying to not only get back into the Pac 12 championship game, but getting back into that playoff race. They just need to make sure they can end the season strong. But you mentioned it, they still have some tough games left on their schedule.
They have an absolute gauntlet coming up. And again, Oregon can easily not make the Pac 12 championship. That's why the last 4 weeks of the Pac 12, we've been saying this for a while now, but the last month of the Pac 12, starting now in November, is going to be one for the ages here because uh, Oregon still has a gauntlet. I know they're playing Cal this weekend, and that should be a bye game, quote unquote, but they still end the season playing USC, playing Oregon State, and even Arizona State has given some teams problems. I realize that Arizona State sucks, but they've given fits to Washington. They've given fits to Colorado. They've given fits to USC. So even though they're a team that's not good on paper, they're a lot better than their record indicates.
Right. I think that's the whole, motto of the Pac 12. I think it's the teams might be having a bad year, but they could still make it a hell, a
A
trip
hell
to
of a
hell
game.
for you. Yeah. A hell of a game to keep it close and make you have to sweat it out to try to get that win. So I don't think anything is really necessarily guaranteed right now in this conference, but I think with this win for Oregon, it gives them some confidence now going into the remaining 4 games of the season because they really needed it ever since they lost that game to Washington. They were really down the dumps and looked like they were in trouble and making the college football playoff. And a statement win like this certainly helps their case.
And I think with that, before we get into our mushing hour, I know it's only a short recap of college football this week, but there's not a lot going on, not a lot of major storylines.
Right.
But the biggest storyline going forward, and we're going to go into that right now, is the release of the college football playoff poll. Just released about 40 minutes ago. We're recording this live as of Tuesday, October 31st on Halloween. Lots of shakeup over here, especially in the top four, which you think would be solidified for the most part. But there's some pretty big shakeups at the one and two, and I would say three spot too. I
Yeah.
mean, it's I can't believe this team is number one. The other teams, when I'm looking at this poll, kind of makes sense for a lot of these teams. Some are a little bit more overrated than
Well,
others. Some are underrated, but I think for the most part, they got 5 through 25, pretty right, and 1 through 4 they missed on.
Well, I would say I think the only reason Ohio State, who is now the number one team in the country as of this past poll, I think the reason is because of their resume. They have the two big wins over Notre Dame and Penn State, and that really, right there, that automatically. And I'm not saying I agree with it either. I think Georgia is right now is still the best team in my opinion. I think they should still be number one. But I think that's what the committee goes into. They always look at the resume when it comes down to putting these teams in the playoffs and
Yeah, I have one better for you, actually.
making it like that. But go ahead.
I'm going to go conspiracy theorist here. The reason why Ohio State's number one is to punish Michigan. I truly believe, because here's the thing. Ever since this inception, Ohio State has always gotten the benefit of the doubt. It doesn't matter what year it is, who's in the top four, who's in the top five. Ohio State has always gotten the benefit of the doubt. There's not a playoff poll you could think of in recent memory where they're like, wow, Ohio State got screwed in this poll. There's not a single one. And they continue. And I feel like with the committee having an Ohio State bias, and with Michigan obviously having a stronger season, but now is plagued by the sign stealing controversy, and we're going to see how that's going to turn out in the next couple of weeks, the next couple of months.
Hmm.
This is an indirect shot to Michigan and Jim Harbaugh.
Well, there is a whole scandal going on with Michigan. That's another thing too. But Michigan also, to be fair, I don't know if you really consider them to be the number one team in the country. They haven't
I
played a
don't.
big time
I
opponent yet
consider them.
either.
I consider them to be two, and I consider Georgia to be number one. But
Yeah,
I feel like the Ohio
that's fair.
the committee did this just to be spiteful, because they're gonna make, like you said, they can make the argument. Oh yeah, they beat Penn State, but they've looked like they've done a whole bunch of nothing besides beat Penn State this
Yeah,
season.
the best two wins are against teams that have been very like shaky this season in Notre Dame and Penn State. I think it's like I said. I think it really comes down to who Georgia has beaten compared to them. I think Georgia's best win the season. I want to say is the game against Kentucky. I think that's their best win right now. Um, so like resume wise, I get it that they're
And,
going to put
and here's
Ohio
the
State
thing about
above them,
Georgia though,
but
because
I don't agree with it
I was
either.
the one guy that was riding them early in the season. They've gotten
Right,
better every single week. So even
they
though
have.
their quality of opponents are the quality of their opponents from the first week to obviously week number 8 are way different, right? They've improved greatly,
Right.
but they keep on scoring more and holding their opponents to less points.
Well, remember we
They
said that going into
embarrassed
the
Florida
Kentucky
this
game.
past week. I mean, this
Right.
hold on. This game against Florida was such a non-story, but we didn't even cover it. And that was always a historic game going into not going into the swamp, but going playing in the
Into
state of Florida,
Jacksonville, yeah.
into Jacksonville. It's hostile territory, and they smoked them. They scored 30, more than 35 straight points after giving up a touchdown, and said, "Okay, that's all you're getting now."
Right.
It wasn't even game. The game, it was a game for about 4 minutes, and then that was it. The game was over.
Right. And like
And
I
Ohio
said,
State can't say that about any team this year. They've had very close games against Penn State and Notre Dame, and the only reason why they beat Notre Dame is because the head coach had 10 men on the field. Let's be real.
and you could make the case Penn State should have won that game. They offense just at any point in that game showed up because
Wasn't anemic. Yeah.
they were really bad in that game. But going back to Georgia, remember we talked about them going into that Kentucky game. That's when they were struggling, and we said if Georgia doesn't start picking it up, they're going to be in trouble. They go into that Kentucky game. They look like the old Georgia that we've seen the last couple of seasons, and since that game, they have really been doing good, like you said. So I think this
Carson
is
Beck looks
honestly.
like a different quarterback. It looks like the replacement of someone else midseason.
But if you think about it, this realistically, I think this is a good thing for Georgia to be number two because it's the committee. It's the committee saying to you, we don't believe in you right now because we don't think you've really played anyone like that big. I
I
think
think
this is a
even Kirby Smart knows what's going up to. I think he even knows it's a bias.
well. I
Like
think Kirby
his
Smart's
coaches
okay,
aren't dumb.
but I think Kirby Smart's fine with it
Oh
because
yeah, if I'm Kirby Smart right
this
now, I'm
sparks
ecstatic.
this really like lights your team up and saying, oh, they don't think that we're the number one team in the country after we won multiple national championships. All right, let's prove it to them. That's a bad thing. I think the committee really screwed it up in the scheme of things by doing it that way. So
Well, yeah, they lit a fire under Georgia, and they got Michigan all mad, and Ohio State's like, oh look, we're number one again, even
right,
though they've done nothing to deserve it. I don't care what
right.
Ohio State fan wants to
That's what
say
I'm saying.
otherwise. They've done
Georgia
absolutely nothing to
fan,
deserve it.
for any Michigan and Georgia fan, I think this is. I think you're right now smiling because this is the committee saying, you know what, we don't really believe in you two. We believe in this team because they've already beaten ranked teams before, and you guys haven't beaten a ranked team. So
Listen, all I'm gonna
I
say is
think this is good for both.
their best win is against an anemic Penn State team that's who always chokes in when the lights up brightest. Have been
I agree.
choking since the Obama administration at this point,
Or
and
maybe longer than that.
Notre Dame's best win is against Louisville. So, and we don't even know how they are because they've had
Notre
one or
Dame
two
didn't win that
affiliates.
game. Notre Dame's best win this season.
I'm sorry, they lost to Louisville. That's their best
Yeah.
loss this season is against Louisville.
Notre Dame's best win, I think, was Duke, right?
I mean, yeah, I would say Duke from a perspective. Maybe
I think it has to be Duke. I don't think they beaten anyone. Oh, US. I guess USC. Yeah.
USC is not that good.
Yeah, but I think that's the best one they have by far because Duke's no longer in the rankings. USC's still ranked. I think
Yeah,
that
so
that's
your
by
best
far their
win is
best win.
USC,
But
and your best
yeah,
loss is probably I'm not is maybe Louisville. Besides Ohio State is the Louisville. Excuse me.
but other than that, before we go into the mushing hour, was there anything else that caught your eye, or maybe the other question I have for you is there a team right now that's not right now in the playoff, the top four, maybe not even the top 10 that you think that maybe could make a late push to get into that college football playoff?
Do I want to mush this though? That's the question you're asking me.
That's up to you.
So I think if they have a close game this week and finish out the season strong, because I think they could potentially beat Penn State down the line because that's how Penn State usually is. That the Scarlet Knights can maybe get into the top 25. That's my dream. They have receiving votes this week. I know it's not the official college football poll, it's the AP poll, but maybe they can get into the top 25. Just maybe.
They gotta be one ranked team. I think that will do it. But they only have
I
two
feel
ranked
like
teams left in the season.
if they have close games against Ohio State, Penn State, and they blow out Iowa and Maryland, they go 8-4 in the season. With all these other teams, ranked teams
Maybe,
losing, I feel like they could do it.
maybe. I don't know. A team will also have to fall out of the rankings too. That's
I
the
mean,
other
yeah,
thing.
one
But
these
yeah.
teams are gonna fall out. There. Like, no offense, one of Kansas, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Tulane,
Well, yeah.
UCLA, Utah. One of these, both. I think all of these teams are gonna fall out of the rankings
Remember,
within the next 2 weeks.
Oklahoma State and Kansas State, they both play two of the top teams in the Big 12 right now in terms of
There you go.
rankings, so they potentially could fall out easily. And Kansas right now, I think, is a road dog. I think at Iowa State this week.
Yeah, so I'm not like
So
that. Listen,
who
like I
knows?
feel like it's possible even if they don't get the win against one of these big teams. You just have to believe. But I would also like to see Air Force into the top 15. That's another dream of mine, but it probably won't happen.
They are number 25 right now, so
Criminally underrated.
it would take a lot. I'm not happy that JMU is not there, but I understand why.
Yeah, but not even eligible to make a bowl game, so I feel
Yeah,
like leaving them off this list is
give it.
dumb, but it's
Remember,
appropriate.
again, remember it moves to 12 next year. That's where all the chaos starts. You'll
Yeah, because then we're
potentially get
gonna.
one of those mid majors into the playoff.
I can't wait to see Tulane in the playoffs. It's gonna be great.
I know you're excited for it. So, as much as I don't want to see this college football season end, I kind of want next season to already start because of all
Yeah,
the new
I'm already
conferences and
counting my I'm already
playoffs.
counting the days.
Yeah,
365 days.
but we're also counting the days this is coming Saturday for some big time action. There's a lot of big games this upcoming weekend, Johnson. A lot of ranked opponents facing each other. A lot of implications in terms of their conferences, and I think it's a perfect way to set up our next mushing hour. And considering that it's Halloween, Johnson, this could be the most dangerous mushing hour we've had yet.
It's gonna be very spooky for a lot of these teams, especially the ones that we both pick. Because anyone who has listened before, if we both agree on a team, we think that's a lock. Oh man, well, then it's a mush.
I don't. I'm trying to think. I think we were good though last week in terms of that.
We were
Colorado,
on Colorado plus 16.5. We
right?
were good on.
I think
That
that was
was
the
the
only
only.
one.
And they're still losers. It's like here's the thing.
Right. They
Yeah,
still
wow,
lost
they
the game.
covered. Yeah, they still lost the game.
You
Um,
covered, but at what cost?
yeah, you covered that one because I remember we both picked. Just going back to the NFL, we both picked the Eagles to win. We both picked the Chargers to win. We both pick any other team to win. We've kind of just mushed them. It's kind of crazy when we kind of agree. It's not often that we both have like, oh, this is our universal pick, but when it does happen, when the stars do align, 9 out of 10 times we're wrong.
Right.
That's just usually how it goes. Like when we pick the Giants, we pick the Patriots. Doesn't usually end up well. All right, but with that being said, we have our first game. We have the Ohio State going on the road to beautiful New Jersey, taking on the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. Ohio State 18.5 point favorites on the road. The over under set at 43. I've said this before. Give me Rutgers plus 18 and a half. They are almost undefeated against the spread this season. They are 7-1 against the spread. The only team which they did not cover in was the game they won against Michigan State, and they did not cover by half a point. So Rutgers covering against Ohio State. Just give me one more of time.
Oh man, I want to believe in the Scarlet Knights. I really do. Uh I just don't know how I feel about them playing Ohio State. Did they push against Michigan in that game they
They
played at
covered
Ann
by half
Arbor
a point.
by half a point? I hate to do it. I'm gonna pick Ohio State 18 and a half. I'm not
All
confident
right.
in it, but I think if you're
As
if
James Gandolfini rolls in his grave.
but if I'm you, I'm thinking that that might be better for you. I did have a really good week last week in college. I'm thinking I'm gonna go back to earth this week, but I think the Buckeyes get it done. Even if they don't cover, I still think they win the game by 2 touchdowns.
All right. So then the next game we have here, we have the Kansas State Wildcats, number 23 in the nation, going on the road to beautiful Austin, Texas, take on the Longhorns, number 7 in the country. Texas at home, minus 5 point favorites, and 51.5 is the slated over under.
Now
Give me,
Johnson,
yep.
before you make your pick, the line did change to -4. So does that impact your pick at all?
Yes, it makes it easier because I'm still going to take Texas in the points. They just have to
Okay.
cover by less now, so that is favorable for me.
Yeah.
Give me Texas and the points, -4. I don't care if it game line changes midway. Kansas State's going to fall out of the rankings this week, and Texas is going to cover.
Okay. Uh, you know me. Anytime it's a Big 12 game, I see the points and I like it a lot. I I like Texas covering as well. I think they're going to win. But I will take the over. The over's been kind of flipping between 50 and a half to 51 and a half. I don't care what number it is. I think the over hits no matter what. And that's even with Texas having a backup quarterback. Because remember, they don't have Quinn Ewers right now playing. So I still think Texas and
We don't
Kansas
have
State will
Arch
put up some
playing.
points.
Arch isn't even playing.
I know.
We didn't even mention that. It's
I know.
ridiculous.
It's it's
If I'm
a,
the Manning brothers, I'm going nuts right now.
you know what? You know what? Just because they're not doing that, Johnson, we're gonna mush them. Texas -4.
All right. Well, Arch, congratulations.
Change your pick as we
You'll be
talk.
starting by next week. Congratulations, Arch.
Yep.
Okay. We have here the next pick. We have the beautiful Texas A&M Aggies, go Aggies, on the road going into number 10 Ole Miss, taking on the Rebels. Ole Miss at home, -3 point favorites, and 54 is a slated over under. Give me Texas A&M +3.
Okay.
I really like this Aggies team. They've showed a lot of promise. They're so close, even with the backup quarterback, to winning a lot of these games, and I feel like they're eventually going to get one. So give me the Aggies.
I mean, this is a big game for Ole Miss because they're still in the thick of the playoff race. They're now the 10th ranked team in the country. They can't afford to lose if they want to have an opportunity. Texas A&M, Jimmy Johnson, unfortunately, they just haven't seemed like that team that we expected them to be, in which they win big time
Well,
games.
they don't have the quarterback. That's the issue.
Well,
Like,
that's the problem, and that's a Jimbo Fisher problem. He's got to do something soon because they can't keep doing this every single season. So, because of that, I'm going to take Ole Miss -3 in this one.
pain and
Yeah,
suffering. All right.
I just think they have too much to play for right now.
All right. And the next game we have here, we have number 12 Missouri Tigers on the road going into the Peach State, taking on the number 2 Georgia Bulldogs, who are at home. University of Georgia -15.5 point favorites at home. 56 is the slated over under. No one's stopping Georgia. They've been covering. They've been having non-competitive football games the last month. Give me Georgia 15.5. Try it next year, Mizzou.
Yeah, I will say Mizzou deserves a lot of credit for this season. They're the 12th ranked team in the country right now as of this previous playoff poll. And I think you're right. I think the committee put in Georgia now number 2 is going to light a spark under them going into this game. Uh, I'm also going to take Georgia -15 and a half. So that's going to be 2 for us this week. I just think Georgia's playing for a lot right now. Missouri definitely could play spoiler, but the Dogs they're looking to prove why they're the number 1 team in the country.
It's Mizzou +15.5 is the play now.
Mizzou +15 and a half and Kansas State +4 so far.
Yep. Those are the plays now, so don't listen to us. Okay, the next game we have number 9 Oklahoma Sooners, Boomer Sooners, staying in state to go take on the Cowboys of Oklahoma State, number 22 in the country. Oklahoma, even though they're on the road, is a 5.5 point favorite, and the over under is slated at 60.5. Give me Oklahoma to finish off the season for Oklahoma State. Give me Oklahoma minus 5.5, and they're going to keep their Big 12 title game hopes alive, and maybe their college football playoff hopes alive. But give me the Sooners to win this game and cover at 5.5.
Who is it sad that I'm really considering Oklahoma State in this game. It's really tough for me. I really want to lean with the Cowboys because it's going to be a home game, obviously in Stillwater for them. The Battle of Bedlam, as they like to call it. This Oklahoma State team beat Kansas, the team that just beat Oklahoma as well. I think we're going to see another shootout. I think because of that implications for both of these teams, I think the over hits in this one as well. So I'm going to take the over in another Big 12 game.
Okay, then let's talk about the next game. We have the number 5 Washington Huskies trying to keep their national championship hopes alive, going on the road into USC. This is one of those spoiler games we talked about earlier. Number 20 USC, the Trojans in the country. Washington on the road, still 3.5 point favorites, over underslated at 76.
It was originally at 76
70,
and a half, and now moved.
76. So, oof, you get an extra half point there, guys. Watch out.
Well, look what happened to USC this past week. They played a 50-49 shootout with Cal. So I think that's why this
Anything
line
is
is this high.
possible. Even though I think Washington is kind of under fire and they maybe not win this game. Uh, it's very possible that which they don't. But if they're going to win this game, it's going to be more of a field goal. So give me Washington State minus 3.5. I still think they will win this game and try to keep their season alive. But I would put upset alert, medium alert for Washington right here. So I'm going to take Washington minus 3.5. But the upset is definitely possible.
The sick part of me wants to take the over. I really do want to take it. You know what? I'm gonna be that sick person, Johnson. I'm gonna take the over. I could see this
You
being.
want
I
to
could
see
see.
you want to see 10 touchdowns in a game.
I. You got to think about the implications of this game. You have two Heisman Trophy finalists. The favorite right now, Michael Penix. The preseason favorite, Caleb Williams. These two defenses have been very shaky. I know Washington has a little bit of a better defense than USC, but USC is going to have to continue to score points considering their defense is really bad. They're going to have to try to keep up with this Washington team. So I think a lot of points get scored. I'm going to give you the final for me. I'm going to say it is a 48-41 Washington win. That's my final.
Okay. So that's interesting. Next team we have here staying within the Pac-12, we have Oregon State going into Boulder to take on Deion Sanders. Oregon State number 16 in the country, Colorado unranked, unfortunately. Uh, Give me Oregon State minus 13.5. The over under is slated at 63, but I'm going to take Oregon State minus 13.5. Deion Sanders just pretty much trashed his entire offensive line, and they have to protect their son for another month. Not really the smartest thing, and I think he's going to have a kind of a mini mutiny in the locker room right now.
Well, both of these teams are also coming off a tough loss this past week. Colorado lost by 12 to UCLA on the road. Oregon State obviously had that tough defeat against Arizona. They both want to get back on track. I also like the Beavers. I'm going to take them alternate spread though in this one. I'm going to take them minus 10. I could see Colorado covering. I'm not too confident in it, so I will just take OSU minus 10.
Okay, we have two more games here left on the Mushing Hour. But first up, we have number 19, University of California, Los Angeles, the Bruins on the road, number 19 in the country, on the road going into Arizona to take on
The
the
Wildcats.
Wildcats. Yes, it took me a second there. I was thinking the Sun Devils, that's Arizona State. UCLA minus 2.5 point favorites on the road, over under slated at 53.5. Give me Arizona plus 2.5. They've given fits to teams throughout the year, and I smell an upset for UCLA and the New Year's Six Bowl aspirations.
Well, it's funny because I also smell it too, but I'm not going to take them plus 2.5. I'm taking Arizona money line. They treated me well last week with the covering and the win overall against Oregon State. I think they go out of debt again this week and get the win, and they get entered into the top 25 polls next week. So, congratulations, Wildcats fans.
All
I
right, and
hope.
with the final With the final game of the Mushing Hour, we have number 14, Louisiana State University, the Tigers, go Tigers, on the road going into Bryant-Denny Stadium to take on the Alabama Crimson Tide, number 8 in the country. Alabama at home, minus 3-point favorites, over under slated at 60.5 as of this recording. Give me LSU plus 3. I don't know if they get the upset like they have in the past, but it's going to be a close game, and I think Alabama wins by less than a field goal. So give me
Now,
Louisiana State plus 3.
okay. The question I have for you is, let's say LSU wins this game, Johnson. Do they get back into the playoff
No,
picture with the win? You think
no,
they're
they're
still
done.
out no matter what?
Even if they beat Georgia, they're not getting in.
Okay. Okay. I think it would take a lot. I think Georgia also being Georgia would help them, but the two losses in conference play
It
definitely
would
hurt.
depend if Washington, in my opinion, Washington, Oregon would also have to lose at least one game apiece.
Right.
So I
You
will
know,
take
it's
I'll take a 2-loss SEC champion over a 1-loss Pac-12 champion. That's my opinion.
by the way, I'm looking at ESPN right now. I'm watching the college football playoff show. They have Tulane if they were doing a 12-team playoff as the 12th team in the playoffs. So
Yeah, I believe it.
that's something that you can look forward to for next season. But going back to this game, LSU and Alabama, obviously game day will be there. It's a night game on CBS. Those always play really fun, and this was an interesting one because Alabama's looking for revenge against the Tigers after last season, ending their national championship dreams last year. They've been playing better as of late. I think LSU has started to play a little bit better as well since that loss to Ole Miss. I really can't believe I'm going to take it, but I'm going to go with the under in this game. Bama's defense has been the catalyst for them getting back into this, the stretch of where they're playing right now. Their offense has gotten a little bit better, but a night game in Tuscaloosa, I think the defense has come out to play, and I think we're going to get a low scoring, maybe 23 to maybe 17 final in this one. Not sure who wins the game, but I could see the defense is playing big in a matchup like this with a lot on the line.
Okay, and that concludes the Mushing Hour. And before we do sign off, and before I will give you final words, Nick, I'm going to plug the Central Jersey Card Show
Of
happening
course.
this Saturday, November 4th, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. in Middlesex County Community College in the College Center. That's 2600 Woodbridge Avenue, Edison, New Jersey, 08837 from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. There's going to be over 40 vendors, 100 tables worth of cards and sports memorabilia. Please come and say hi. It is free for children under the age of 12, and general admission is $3. Looking forward to a great show.
Yeah, that should be a really fun show. Obviously, you will be there in attendance. I wish I was there with you to enjoy that performance, but I will not be there, unfortunately, due to other obligations. So, either way, it should be a great show this upcoming Saturday. A lot to talk about, obviously, with college football and NFL going on. We have baseball's around the corner. We have the World Series going on. NBA has just started, so there's a lot to talk about going into this upcoming show for you. So, it should be a fun one for you. But is there anything else you would like to talk about before we wrap up the show tonight?
That was the last thing I wanted to plug, and I will give final thoughts and words to you.
Week 10, we're coming up, Johnson. We're getting close. We're almost at the end of the season. It's crazy to think that we're now at the spot in the season, and we're that close to finding out who the top 4 teams are in the country. But with a loaded slate this week, that picture could be easily shaken up after this upcoming weekend. So you're gonna want to tune into next week's show to see how it all unfolds and see what the top 25 looks like in terms of playoff poll, because I think there's going to be some shakeups going into next weekend's ranking show. So we'll have to see how it all unfolds and what will be the overall outcomes for each of these games as we look to get just one step closer to finding out who is going to be in the national championship picture and who will be getting closer to their conference championships respectively. But that is going to do it for this week's edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. Week number 9 is in the books. Now head into week number 10. What's going to happen? Are we going to finally find out? Are we going to have any pretenders or maybe contenders for this college football playoff? Who knows? I'm sure we'll find out and we'll see some big time upsets if, going the way that every college football season has gone. Expect the unexpected. So we'll have to see how it all happens, and we'll be sure to recap it all next week here on the show. This has been Nicholas Pavona, joined alongside by Andrew Johnson with the All Gas No Break Sports Show. Have a great rest of your weekend.